Have you ever seen one of those images where at first glance everything looks familiar, but the longer you look, the more you realize that you physically can't make out what exactly anything in the picture is? In a nutshell, the same could be said for the UAF era design of the Omnitrix's Orictini sample Eatle, and to be honest, I think that's a good thing. I've already made one video sharing my controversial opinion on some of the more unpopular Ben 10 alien designs, so let's get right into why UAF Eatle is a far better design than the one used in Ben 10 Omniverse. It's hero time! First off, let me just say that I don't dislike the Omniverse design for Eatle. In fact, I quite like it, so, don't get that mixed up. I don't need hate comments about that. I like both designs. However, when it comes to an objective standpoint, I'd be lying if I said that Omniverse Eatle was better than UAF Eatle. I know a lot of people prefer Omniverse Eatle, so I wanted to make this video for the purpose of expressing why I personally think that UAF Eatle is a better design, and why I believe that the Omniverse design was a serious downgrade. First, the obvious issue. Orictini are aliens who live light years upon light years away from Earth, and they evolved in an environment entirely unlike those found on Earth. As a result, I find it very hard to believe that this species could experience a convergent evolution so close to that of life on Earth, that an alien species ends up looking almost exactly like a giant version of a typical Earth beetle. I'm sorry, but I just can't stretch my imagination that far, even with the Ben 10 franchise. The UAF Eatle design immediately resolves this issue that I have. Like I said at the start of this video, the UAF Eatle is like one of those incomprehensible images, and that's what aliens absolutely should be like. They're entirely different life forms from completely different regions of space. It makes more sense that they have appearances that our minds couldn't rationalize or attribute to other things found on our planet, so that makes the UAF design immediately more unique. On top of that, the UAF Eatle is a lot more distinct than the other alien that turns food into energy blasts, Upchuck. If you look at Upchuck and Omniverse Eatle, they've both got short limbs, rounded builds, and chunky faces. UAF Eatle is more interesting because he has a more unique body shape, and he had a bigger emphasis on his own physical strength rather than just being a trash compactor like he ended up becoming in Omniverse. In UAF, he was more physically capable and was often fighting hand to hand, whereas in Omniverse he was pretty exclusively used to eat trash and fire laser beams. As it stands, Omniverse Eatle is just Upchuck but as a bigger target with a weaker attack, whereas UAF Eatle was both strong and durable, able to trade blows with Dagon-empowered Vilgax of all people, and come out relatively alright. In addition, at least when it came to his lasers, Eatle was more visually interesting due to the fact that his lasers fired in a line rather than in a disc or cylindrical beam, and the beams were visibly weaker than those of Upchuck because, at the end of the day, it was only one aspect of Eatle's power system, whereas in Omniverse he was literally reduced to just being a trash chute with a laser pointer. Also, clever little design piece that I've noticed, but UAF Eatle's mouth was actually shaped like a bin, which I think is more fun and unique than just, oh look, he has a big underbite. I know a lot of people have issue when it comes to metallic aliens, and that seems to be one of the reasons that Omniverse Eatle is more popular, at least as far as I could tell, but there's an absolutely brilliant explanation as to why Eatle is made out of metal. In the real world, there is an animal known as the diabolical ironclad beetle. Eatle being made of metal could be a direct reference to the name of this real-world beetle, and I think that's a lot more believable as a convergence of evolution too. It makes more sense that an alien species coincidentally ended up with similar horns and a similar namesake to a species found on Earth, rather than an alien species evolving to look almost exactly like a species found on Earth. Real beetles are also known for their incredible strength, such as the horned dung beetle that can lift 1,000 times its own body weight. That's another thing that makes UAF Eatle more like real beetles without just making him look like a real beetle, and calling it a job well done there and then. It's infinitely better to make an alien with subtle references to real-world animals but with many overall distinguishing differences, rather than to just make it a direct comparison to a real-world animal, because then it just seems lazy. UAF Eatle is a strong and creative design, and perfectly captures the very concept of what an alien could look like. Also, going back briefly to the thing about being made of metal, I think I have another idea for why Eatle is this way. For us humans, we need to intake calcium to make our bones stronger. For species like the Orictini that have an exoskeleton, I think it makes perfect sense that this species, who eat primarily metal and rubble, would have a metal-like exoskeleton. It would explain how their energy blasts work as well. They eat something, break it down into its base elements, convert metal substances into reinforcement for their armored shells, and release whatever waste products are left as their lasers. This is such an interesting concept, and introduces an entirely different digestive cycle to a species that already looks so alien. Isn't it much more interesting for a species to look different and have a very different internal anatomy, as opposed to just being a bigger version of a real-life thing with some superpowers slapped on? I think UAF Eatle is a fascinating alien, in both design, speculative biology, and powers, and I wish more people could appreciate it over the Omniverse design, if not at least on a level comparable to the Omniverse design. I really do think that Eatle's portrayal in Omniverse is what has led to so many people to thinking of him as a less useful version of Upchuck. To be fair, Eatle was introduced into the franchise by featuring in an episode that was all about Ben not being interested in using his newer aliens, and you could argue that he wasn't a fan of Eatle because he already had Upchuck, but we saw several times that he did go to Eatle when it came to feats of strength, whereas Upchuck is more just about eating and spitting attacks back. These aliens were very fundamentally different at first, but with Omniverse, Eatle was unfortunately reduced into a redundant alien with nothing really unique to say for itself, and then as a result, the design became the only thing that people really cared about. With all that being said, that about does it for this video, so keep an eye out for future content, and for now guys, I am out. Sorry for a shorter video, but there wasn't really much to say here. Just wanted to get my opinion out there.